keep forgetting I can talk without this. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Newark. I'm Marie LaBerge. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am your worship associate today. I've been a member of UUFN for about 21 years, and I'm currently serving as co-chair of the worship team. And I want to thank them all for the extraordinary labor that they've put into keeping us together for the last couple years. We are absolutely thrilled that today's service is by Gary Jackoway. A homegrown hero, and is entitled to Are You Awake? And now Gary will share our call to worship.
It's great to be back here. Look to this day, for it is life, the very life of life. In its brief course lie all the verities and realities of your existence. The bliss of growth, the glory of action, the splendor of beauty. For yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this day. Our chalice lighting words today are from Mary Oliver. To live in this world, you must be able to do three things. To love what is mortal. To hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it. And when the time comes to let it go, to let it go. Thank you. Our reading today is from The Immense Journey by Lauren Isley, a 20th century scientist and naturalist. I had slogged through fern and pine needles for half a long day, and on the edge of a little glade, I sat down to rest my back against a stump. Through accident, I was concealed from the glade, although I could see into it perfectly. The murmurs of forest life blurred softly away into my sleep. The light was slanting down through the pines, and there, on an extended branch, sat an enormous raven with a red and squirming nestling in his beak. The sound that awoke me was the outraged cries of the nestling's parents, who flew helplessly in circles about the clearing. The sleek black monster was indifferent to them. He gulped, wetted his beak on the dead branch for a moment, and sat still. Up to that point, the little tragedy had followed the usual pattern. But suddenly, out of all that area of woodland, a soft sound of complaint began to rise. Into the glade fluttered small birds of half a dozen varieties, drawn by the anguished outcries of the tiny parents. No one dared to attack the raven, but they cried there in some instinctive common misery, the bereaved and the unbereaved. They fluttered as though to point their wings at the murderer. There was a dim, intangible ethic he had violated that they knew. He was a bird of death. And he, the murderer, the black bird at the heart of life, sat on there, formidable, unmoving, unperturbed, untouchable. The sighing died. It was then I saw the judgment. It was the judgment of life against death. I will never see it again so forcefully presented. I will never hear it again in notes so tragically prolonged. For in the midst of protest, they forgot the violence. There in that clearing, the crystal note of a song sparrow lifted hesitantly in the hush. And finally, another took the song, and then another, the song passing from one bird to another, doubtfully at first, as though some evil thing were being slowly forgotten, till suddenly they took heart and sang from many throats joyously, together as birds are known to sing. They sang because life is sweet and sunlight is beautiful. They sang under the brooding shadow of the raven. In simple truth, they had forgotten the raven, for they were singers of life and not of death. The place, Scripps Memorial Hospital. My mother and I are at my father's bedside. A nurse walks in. Before I go further, let me tell you a little about my family. My mother was an English professor, my father a philosophy professor. My older brother received degrees in history and classics, my younger brother in journalism, and I got a degree in computer science. So I was a bit of the black sheep of the family. I am also more than a little bit of a contrast because my belief system is so different from my father's. My dad was a strict materialist and mechanist. He believed that the physical world was all there is, that our actions are predetermined by our physical makeup. There is no free will, no spirit, no God, no real consciousness. I, on the other hand, have always felt a presence beyond our physical world and believe we have choices to follow the positive spirit or to work against it. And when my father and I used to argue about these things, I would simply point out that according to his own beliefs, I have no choice but to believe what I believe. So that leads us back to the hospital. My father has been fading, especially over the last week. My mother and I are in the room when the nurse comes in. She needs to do yet another test. "Malcolm," she asks, "are you awake?" "No," he replies. We all laugh. I did not know that that would be the last conversation my father would have. He passed away only a few hours later. I could not get that interaction out of my mind. "Are you awake?" Now, I know that my father would probably have said that it had no great meaning, but to me it hinted at a deeper truth. What does it mean to be awake? And I have to say that that question became almost like a Chinese koan, a riddle for me to solve as I processed the passing of my father. Are you awake? I note that at some level, this sense of awakeness boils down into two quite different things. One is a sensory awakeness, being aware of your surroundings at a deep and fundamental level. That sense some of us achieve now and again when we seem to be part of nature and nature a part of us. The other way to be awake has to do with how we perceive those around us, a sense of compassion to their plight, empathy with their moods. This is closely related to being woke, a surprisingly old term that has found new life in recent years in terms of being alert to social and racial discrimination and injustice. Now, for those familiar with my services, a quick note that this one's a tad different. Instead of there being a through line, sort of a clear movement from point A to B to C, this is a series of vignettes, a bundle of thoughts I have had since that day in the hospital. Some of these meditations may even be contradictory. That's okay, we're all Unitarians here, and we're used to handling contradictions. And I thought I'd share one of my favorite quotes from essayist Charles D'Ambrosio, who said, "What really distinguishes us from apes is not the opposable thumb, but the ability to hold in mind opposing ideas, a distinction we should probably try to preserve." In the last 18 months, my wife Ingrid and I have driven between our old house in Delaware and our new home in Tennessee numerous times. It's a more than 10-hour drive. Sometimes we've done it together, like this time, and sometimes we've done solo, transferring the contents of 30 years in Delaware to our new home in Tennessee. Now, the bulk of that drive is along I-81, a lovely highway that follows the Appalachians, the border between West Virginia and Virginia, along that long, endless tail. Now, the thing about long drives is that we tend to zone out, thinking about what you need to do when you get there, what you forgot to do before you left, or listening to music or podcasts, but you're not really there. As I began processing my father's last conversation, I thought I would try spending some time on the drive being present, focusing on what is around me. At one point, I saw this flatbed truck coming the other way on I-81 with the Olympic rings, 8 feet tall each, in different colors. I would notice bumper stickers, especially those of like-minded souls, the occasional rainbow LGBT sticker, and so on. I was more aware of the birds perched along streetlights and billboard signs. It was too bad on that trip Ingrid wasn't with me to tell me which kind of birds they were. And it was a very different experience than listening to Wait, Don't Tell Me. One thing I found out from that experience was that it was way more tiring. A 10-hour drive is hard regardless, but trying to stay focused on the now for a significant length of time is exhausting. Perhaps with practice it would become more natural. We see everything, every sign, every branch on every tree, but our brain filters what is raised to our conscious mind, only keeping those things that are deemed important. If not, we would go mad with overstimulation. We simply cannot be attentive to the full range of stimuli to which we are exposed. So we must be selective, and much of that happens without conscious thought. With practice, one can choose when to become more aware, more awake. Many years ago, when I lived in Colorado, I was on a hike with my older brother, he of the classics degree, and he said, "Seen one tree, seen them all." Of course, that is false. In a stand of 1,000 trees, each one is unique. All one need do is look closely. This is part of being awake, seeing the details, seeing what makes each of us special. Now, at that time, I considered myself an amateur photographer. Had all the lenses and a little black and white dark room in the bathroom. This was back in the days of film cameras. And we would go on hikes and I'd take pictures of the Colorado woods and mountains. One overcast day, we were hiking through a lovely glade and I was grumpy. The light was such that I really couldn't take any good photos. Then it came to me like an epiphany. I was in this beautiful place, but I wasn't there. I was looking for images instead of enjoying the spot. I gave up photography that very day. Ironically, a few weeks later, I learned that a photo I had submitted to a contest won first place. But I decided I would rather be in the woods than photograph them. I spend a lot of my free time paddling my canoe. I love the quiet, the birds, the scenery. Though I don't fish, recently I've become enamored with the idea. You see, when you're paddling, it feels like you're kind of slacking off if you just stop and look at the scenery. But compare it to someone who's fishing. They can sit in their boat with their line in the water, and not worry about where they're supposed to go, how many miles they're supposed to go. They can just enjoy being there. I cannot tell you how many times we have gone by fishermen and fisherwomen, and we've asked, "Catch anything?" with the answer being something like, "No, but it's great to be out." And we usually respond with, "Any day on the water is a good day." There's a reason we moved to a lake in Tennessee. My best attempts at awakeness, even before my father led me to consider it, has been while paddling. Someday, when it's bright and we're in the middle of a beautiful spot, I can become aware of all that is around me. The quiet birds, the sparkling water, the rustling trees, and I can be at one. Recently, I must say, the service has kind of gotten in the way. Many of the thoughts I am sharing today came to me while in the canoe. But then I'd start thinking, I should really capture that idea, and I'd worry about forgetting about it and before I returned, and all of this concern affected my feelings about the surroundings. But then I found a solution, the sound recorder on my cell phone. So I would just jot down a little 10-second note, and then when I got back, I'd be able to record the thought. And then I could get back to being present in that place. Being present. Now, as many of you know, those are the first two words of the UUFN's vision statement. The full statement is written right behind me on the wall. Being present, nurturing community, taking action, we create change and are thereby changed. And being present is one form of being awake. I remember when we were working on developing that vision statement. It took a number of meetings. But at one point, I distinctly remember saying that maybe we only needed those first two words, being present. When we are present, we can nurture one another. When we are present, we can help create the change that is needed. When we are present, we can accept changes within ourselves necessary to our growth. So maybe, just maybe, the answer to "Are you awake?" is yes, I am present. What is the difference between aware and awake? I was discussing this issue with my wife, Ingrid, and she suggested that being awake was a more active form of being aware. Just being aware of something means you know about it, but you don't necessarily feel like taking action. Being awake to something means feeling a commitment to making it right. In the Unitarian Universalist Association's ongoing discussion of the eighth principle concerning racism, it would be a sad statement indeed if the principle were merely to say we were aware that racism exists. Instead, the proposed principle focuses on dismantling racism in this nation and taking action to right the wrongs that we see. I am told that in Al-Anon they talk about the 3 A's: awareness, acceptance, action, specifically in that order. Because until we come to acceptance, one is unable to take effective action. Maybe being awake is some combination of the 3 A's in one concept. Awareness is being cognizant of the current situation. Acceptance is not accepting that that is the way things must be, but that is the way things are now, not denying or sugarcoating reality. And of course, action is working to resolve the problems we see. So maybe being truly awake is to follow those 3 steps. When it comes to being awake, consider the difference between humans and dogs. I've lived with dogs for almost my entire life. For dogs, there is no future and little past. There's pretty much only the now. If we humans see a cooked steak on a plate on the floor, we'll wonder how it got there. Who made it? Is it safe to eat? How long has it been there? But a dog will walk up and eat it. Now, my dog Diamond can be lying on the couch, half asleep, only theoretically guarding the house. But if I say one word, walk, she's up and ready to go. For a dog, her now is now and isn't festooned with analysis and evaluation. Living with dogs, I sometimes wonder whether we have sort of evolved past being awake. That animals have a level of awakeness we struggle to achieve. When Diamond plays tug of war with one of her toys, that is all there is in the world. Her, me, the toy. But I'm worrying about whether the toy will knock over the lamp and whether I fed her or filled her water dish. This living in the present is a big part of being awake. But we humans spend so much of our time in the past and future that it takes effort to be here now. We can truly learn a lot from our animals. Now, I don't consider working on being awake to be a full-time job. Some days, one has to deal with problems at work, or a mother in an unsafe living condition, or you just struggle to get through the day. Most of our days appear to follow a similar course to the ones that preceded them. But we make decisions to continue that pattern. Many times it's tempting to say, I don't have a choice. But perhaps it's more helpful to say, I don't have a better choice right now. Both changes to the phrase are important. It is not that one doesn't have a choice. Keeping on doing what you have been doing is a choice. And hopefully, when you choose that, it is the best choice for you at the moment. Hopefully, we do what we have done in the past because that is the right thing for us to be doing right now. And it is important on those days to find something that helps you maintain your peace of mind. Now, for me, classical music or looking out at the lake helps a lot. I find both very peaceful. And everyone should have something that brings them peace. For many of those looking for peace of mind, for mindfulness, meditation is a key. I admit that I have difficulty meditating by sitting in quiet. I know some prefer the meditation of the labyrinth, and I suppose my paddling meditation is a similar kind of nature. For those who are interested in sitting meditation, I will simply refer you to your local expert, Richard Field. And I am reminded of a quote that is attributed to Mahatma Gandhi. When asked how he maintained his equanimity, he replied that he meditated for 1 hour a day, except on days that were really busy and trying. Then he meditated for 2 hours. When I work on a service, it seems that the right books just are delivered to me. That reading that I started with is from Lauren Isley's book that's really about anthropology. I just happened to be reading it. And recently I've been reading a fascinating book by the Dalai Lama titled The Universe in a Single Atom, where he compares Western science with Tibetan Buddhist thought. The first half of the book follows a well-traveled path comparing Western and Eastern views on physics. And in my youth, I read the Tao of Physics, so I was pretty clear on that part of it. But the second half of the book blew me away. Here, the Dalai Lama looks at consciousness, comparing Western neuroscience to Tibetan Buddhism. And in Tibet, they have developed consciousness thought over more than 1,000 years. One of the points of Buddhist meditation is to cultivate mindfulness, to become aware at a higher level, to explore one's consciousness. Now, much of this book was difficult to get my head around because the Dalai Lama starts from such a different place. For instance, neither Sanskrit nor classic Tibetan have a word for emotion. The concept simply doesn't exist. Instead, they divide senses into afflictive, negative, and non-afflictive, positive, whether they are intellectual thoughts or what we would call emotions. Where this leads from the perspective of this service is an intriguing revelation. This is the quote from the Dalai Lama. From an experiential point of view, one difference between the afflictive emotions, such as hate, and wholesome states, such as compassion, is that afflictions tend to fixate the mind on a concrete target, a person to whom we become attached, a smell or sound we wish to push away. The wholesome emotions, by contrast, can be more diffuse, so the focus is not confined to one person or one object. Now, this I understood. There are times when I am in my canoe and I close my eyes and I feel that I am not just one with the waters of that lake, but one with the waters of all the lakes and rivers and seas in all the world. Now, those moments do not last long, but they are glorious when they occur. I wonder what my father would think about all these meditations that I'm sharing with you. And I suppose for the most part, he wouldn't necessarily disagree with the conclusions. It is odd how people with widely different spiritual senses can often come to the same conclusions. We all desire loving kindness and compassion, honesty and integrity, love and peace. That is why I found the writing of the Dalai Lama in tune with my own thoughts. And that is, of course, what makes Unitarian Universalism work. We can accept others' spiritual differences and find common ground in our views of the world and the needs of the community. So what is there to learn from the meanderings, the thoughts I've been thinking about being awake? I think the main takeaway is that one need not try to be awake every moment of every day, but should appreciate those moments that glisten and shine, and appreciate those you share them with. There is hardship and loss in every life, but there is also joy and love. I hope that each of you will find that sense of awareness using whatever means works for you. So when you are asked, "Are you awake?" you will be able to answer, "Yes." Our benediction today is from a story I found in a magazine about 3 weeks ago. A man is walking on the path and encounters the Buddha. The man immediately recognizes that the Buddha exudes extraordinary calm, confidence, and serenity. This leads him to ask the Buddha, "My friend, are you a god?" "No," says the Buddha. The man continues, "Then, are you a scholar of holy books?" Again, the Buddha answers, "No." Perhaps you are a priest then, who is advanced in matters of ritual and chanting. Yet again, the Buddha simply smiles and says, no. Then who are you, my friend? The man asks. And the Buddha replies, I am awake.
This concludes our worship service. People online, please remain for your breakout rooms. Thank you for attending the UUFN. We hope to see you soon again.